Vice President Joe Biden's attitude towards China singling it out as America's most serious competitor spelled uncertainty in the business world. So how are global businesses taking risks related to U.S. China relations? How could the global business community work with the two sides? For answers, I talked to Robert Moritz, the chairman of the consulting firm PwC. He said businesses were not taking any chances with serious planning and to ride out uncertainties going forward. Take a look at the interview. I'm joined by Bob Moritz, PwC Chairman. What a pleasure, Mr. Moritz, to see you once again.
It's great to see you as well. Happy to be here.
Now, a new administration coming in. Meanwhile, China has also been working on many fronts. It seems that there could be common ground between the two. But of course, there's always the issue of pride and political environment in two different countries. Who would step first, extend that branch, olive branch, and also what is being considered as constructive. From a business leader's perspective, Mr. Moritz, what is your take?
It's clear that when you look at China, as well as a business leader looking at the U.S., year after year in our own PwC Global CEO Survey, the number one or number two highest rated area for investment by an organization outside of their home country is China and the U.S. It has been this way for the last 10 years, and it's going to be this way presumably for the next several years as well. The world needs to have the opportunity to work with both the U.S. and China. The world needs U.S. and China to have more cooperation, but we have to be realistic in terms of two different systems that are working the way they are currently. And it will take some time for them to co-develop, but there is a lot of common ground. These challenges that I talked about, skilling, climate, social equality, and the like, as well as the vaccination, are not going to be solved within geographic borders.
No.
They need cooperation, and we're going to have to move to get that more so going forward. Having said that, business leaders around the world recognize the divide that exists today when you think about issues like technology, 5G, and the like, and are equipped to deal in that dynamic world that's changing all the time. So the advice we give to business is to make sure that you plan accordingly to work in both systems, that you actually are scenario planning for all different possibilities. We don't know when there might be an opportunity for the two countries to work together or where they'll grow farther apart. But nonetheless, the business community has to be ready and move with speed when these changes happen. It's going to be the most agile leadership teams that can move with that speed and urgency that I talked about before, that can navigate the uncertainty amongst the two countries, as well as around the world in terms of the many uncertainties that exist today. Those are the ones that are going to be successful, that actually are enabling both short-term, long-term success, and success that benefits their broader stakeholders, including of their shareholders.
You know, I'm just personally curious, Mr. Moritz, how many scenarios are you working with right now, even regarding China-U.S. issues? I mean, how much time you have to work on scenario every day? That's to me, would be very interesting, Mr. Moritz.
It's clear that there's various scenarios out there when you look at the uncertainty that businesses are dealing with today. There's the geopolitical issues that just not resting within a U.S. and China situation. You clearly have challenges in the EU when you look at the upcoming election to replace and succeed Angela Merkel. You see the implications coming out of Brexit. You see the concerns relevant to COVID-19, particularly when you talk about some of the countries that might be lagging behind in terms of being able to contain the virus as well as implement and scale a large vaccination program. You could throw on it to the uncertainties around technology and implications around cyber risks and the like. These are the things that we have become more and more accustomed to, though, over the last few years. And as a group of business leaders, you have to look at all these scenarios, and you have to take actions on what you can control. You have to do as best you can to try to work together with others, to try to influence, to try to get to more certainty. And then you have to scenario plan for those uncertainties and those remote events going forward. And all three of those things are what the pressure is on management teams today. Those that stick to their strategy, those that manage their balance sheet well, those that take some risk, not avoid risk, but take some risk, and actually think about the future over the long term with a stakeholder mindset and hold themselves accountable, these are the organizations that'll be doing well regardless of the uncertainties that they face going forward.
Your job, Mr. Moritz, is to talk to business leaders and trying to come up around the world with the best strategy always. So tell me more specifically, if you were given a chance to sit in front of both the Chinese leader and the U.S. leader, as a business leader yourself, what is that priority list you would present to them and say, maybe, gentlemen, take a look at this. They might work for us, all of us. What would that be?
It's clear, without getting too detailed or too specific, that the world would benefit from a lot more cooperation cross-border and a lot more open access to both countries and other countries that are trying to do business in the U.S. and, for that matter, in China. It's clear that, for example, sharing of data is going to be so much more important going forward. COVID-19 is a great example of that, Tian. The more we can share data, the more we can share research, the faster we can find solutions. The unfortunate reality is COVID-19 is in front of us. We will be dealing with mutations going forward, just like we have with the flu over the last X number of decades. This will not be the last issue we have. The more our countries can share data, research, lessons learned, and move with the speed and avoid duplication or gaps, the better off society will be. And that goes to the citizens of the world, not just the citizens of the U.S. or the citizens of China, for that matter. So I think as we look forward, there's many different opportunities. You'd have to take it sector by sector. Each sector has a long list of where we would come up with recommendations for potential change.
Right.
And we continue to encourage business leaders to bring those recommendations to both sides as we think about the world of opportunities ahead of ourselves.
Mr. Moritz, I like the word you just used, the urgency, isn't it? There is an enormous amount of urgency, that which is reflected. Just one example, I was reading a latest survey done by UNDP, surveying about 1.5 million people around the world from 50 countries about whether climate change is the biggest issue they are facing right now. They do believe so. Meanwhile, there has also been surveys about Oxfam, for example, Oxfam International, has been talking about how much carbon has been consumed, in fact, by the top carbon emission by the top 1% rich people of the world, almost 2 times than the poorest 50% of the population. So I have to first say there's a lot of anger against the corporate world, a lot of anger against the business world, particularly outstanding business leaders, probably like you. So, Mr. Moritz, that urgency is really there. How do you see this urgency? How do you see this societal attitude toward people like you?
The reality is we have a big challenge in front of us as a group of leaders. And what I mean by leaders is our business leaders, and for that matter, our country leaders. First off, as we know, trust is important. In order to have trust, you need to engage with your stakeholders. You need to communicate the actions, not only what you're choosing to do, but also why you're choosing to do the things you are, and be responsive to the issues and demands that are out there. So what we see going forward, that anger is being put forth now in the sense of some of the protests, some of the challenges relevant to government, because they don't think that they're being served well, or in some cases by the activism that's happening against and being taken against companies and management teams and boards around the world. And this is where, again, the system has not served society holistically as well it needs to. And that's why the system needs to change. That's why it's important as we think about these reporting metrics that it's not just about the metrics. It's actually about how do we change compensation plans to incent the right behavior? How do we reward the focus on not just providing short-term profitability, but rather thinking about the implications of climate, as you just said. So I think we're going to see over the next few years a lot more consumer and employee activism as well. That'll be another force for change, in addition to what we're seeing with investor activism. As you know, with the amount of money now that institutional investors are putting into ESG-driven funds are changing the marketplace. Likewise, our financial institutions are changing what they're choosing to do. Insurance companies choosing not to underwrite, banks choosing not to lend. To deal with some of these challenges is in response to the world demands and, again, the system that we've had in the past.
On the other hand, Mr. Moritz, let's just be fair. The business world, to a certain extent, have not been presented with the best situation either. Over the past few years, for example, the business world, many of the business leaders you and I have been talking to, really have to function on their own without much support from government or from a relative mechanism, for example, international mechanisms. So it should also be said that business world need to be treated fairly, be treated and supported fairly. With that regard, how do you see the international system is working in which business world has to function?
It's clear, to your point, Tian, that the challenges that the world is facing right now cannot be solved by business by themselves. This is why the concepts I said earlier of public-private partnerships, governments working with business, coming together and engaging in our communities is so important going forward. It's clear that there's not enough money in our systems today at a government level through the raising of taxes or otherwise to deal with the opportunities and the challenges that are embedded within the SDGs, for example. It's clear that what we were able to accomplish over the last 9 months or so with business coming together, working with governments to come up with a vaccination or several different alternatives to a vaccination would have never happened had business not come to and risen to the table, had not been able to work with government, and now work together to actually deal with vaccination, not just the development of the vaccines. Right. And I think this is going to be the examples that we should look to. As you said, there's a lot of anger towards business, but let's reflect on two factors. The business community, particularly those that are our frontline workers, the healthcare systems around the world, the pharmaceutical companies and others in the healthcare space, and the logistical companies that are responsible for distribution right now are really the ones that have stepped forward and supported those workers, supported the frontline workers.
Now, a new administration coming in the United States, what does that mean for businesses? You've been testing the temperature of businesses on a daily basis. Tell me more about that.
So business around the world, I think, is focusing on three elements, and each one of them has a degree of opportunity and optimism in it. First is the need to continue the focus on COVID-19 and the vaccination process. The quicker the vaccination can be delivered in scale in countries around the world, the more likely we are to resume a more normal, not the same normal, but a more normal environment for business opportunities that particularly have been hard for small to medium-sized companies. The second opportunity clearly is the focus on some of the new policies, procedures, and the like that the U.S. government with the new administration is putting in place. Here you see a tremendous focus on climate, some of the orders, the executive orders that President Biden put forth. And many of those are focusing on and betting on the fact that innovation and ideas will create change for the positive, relevant to climate, but also will create economic opportunities in terms of innovation, entrepreneurship, new job opportunities, and expanded growth. And third is the issue of making sure people have the right skills to move forward in the world that we're living in right now. This past year, a tremendous tragedy in terms of the pandemic. You saw great innovation and great focus on the implications of digitization in terms of how work and work of the future changed dramatically and with tremendous speed. That had a negative impact in terms of employment. So it's going to be important for the world to be focused on reskilling the world and the people within it to make sure we can better match the future jobs to those new skill sets. We at PwC issued a report with the World Economic Forum this past week talking about the impact on skilling. If in fact we're able to get more focus in that area, we think we can create another 5 million net new jobs and have a $6.5 trillion positive impact on the economy. It's things like that that are giving more optimism to the business community and giving more optimism, I think, to the citizens around the world.
Robert Moritz from PricewaterhouseCoopers. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.